So let's talk about a very intriguing book. It's actually two books by Peter Kingsley, and they're called Catafalque, Carl Jung, and the End of Humanity. Now, with a title like that, you're probably as intrigued as I was when I first heard about this book. I love Kingsley's books. They challenge your thinking and question what you may know about the subjects he explores. He is no ordinary mind. In Catafalque, Kingsley asks us to consider this. What of the Carl Jung presented in the textbooks, the familiar figure of archetypes and individuation, reflects only part of the story? What if the other half is dangerous, prophetic, and essential for naming our crisis, precisely because that's the part we're not trained to see? Kingsley intends to bring that Jung into the conversation. Now, there are as many Jungs as there are Jungians, but here Jung becomes a powerful force. The book doesn't so much argue as how. It is a deep exploration and lamentation for a culture that has forgotten how to speak to the gods. It attempts to call the soul back to the body. Jung spoke of the spirit of the time and the spirit of the depths. We, modern, efficient, therapized, prefer the spirit of the time, the standardized, the measurable, the peer-reviewed, all of which are important. But the other current is just as important, perhaps even more so, and it's also more dangerous. It has the potential to drag us into the underworld in Anna's style. This realm speaks in images, dreams, and visitations. It does not attempt to flatter our egos. In fact, it dissolves them. Kingsley's contention is that Jung's real work flowed from a much deeper spring, and that we cannot understand him or the moment we are living in without risking that descent ourselves. The descent begins with the Red Book, not as a marginal aside. It's actually the hinge of the whole project, the event that basically changed his life. It is where the language that would become Jung's later psychology first arrives as image and only later becomes concept. Jung was broken open during the period that roughly coincides with the First World War. He was saturated with images and stories which he allowed, risking his own sanity. Now, the sanitized version says he survived an episode, then organized it into a respectable psychology, but Kingsley sees it as so much more. He sees it as an initiation into a new way of seeing and being. It underpins everything that follows: how the psyche works, how symbols are medicine, how the old gods return through the cracks in certainty. So Kingsley reads Jung not as a clinician, but as a prophet whose science was a veil, sometimes necessary, to hide his more radical ideas. Jung's language, complexes, archetypes, individuation are the rational clothes he donned, but underneath he was having a deep conversation with layers of the psyche that reason doesn't know what to do with. Seen this way, individuation is less a self-improvement path and more a difficult dismantling of the persona. We're not optimizing, but dissolving so something larger can be born. To say this plainly in our time sounds crazy, and to practice it seems daunting. But Kingsley wants to tear down the tidy view of Jung and bring out the radical. So why does this matter? Well, because our current crisis is not only political or ecological, it is actually metaphysical. We live in a cosmology that has exiled meaning to the private mind and banished spirit from nature. Kingsley's contention is that our rational material worldview has entranced us, and that the cure requires going deeper into the darkness we avoid, into ritual, myth, dream, and the dangerous territory that is covered by the sacred. Now, there is danger in these descents. Jung knew them well. Inflation. When we make them, the ego can get caught up in its own visions. Now, the antidote is not to deny the descent. The antidote is devotion, humor, craft. You keep your feet grounded, you chop wood, carry water, write your notes, while letting the deeper current move through you. Practice the paradox. Be responsible and allow yourself to descend. How do we practice this in a culture trained against it? Well, we begin by speaking to a living cosmos again, as Richard Tarnas urges in Cosmos and Psyche, and we listen to the world as it answers back through signs, dream, art. We make space for dreams, refusing the idea that they're just the detritus of daily life. We treat synchronicity not as superstition, but as a sign that meaning isn't just in our heads, it shows up in the world. Now, this doesn't mean we abandon scholarship and rational thinking. This is a both-and situation. We also need communities that can do this work. Jung built his tower, but he also wrote letters, taught, argued, failed, apologized. The descent really shouldn't be done alone. We need guides, elders, and artists who have made the journey and return with knowledge and experience. The goal in the end is not ecstasy for its own sake. It is to become citizens of an ensouled world again. In the end, Peter Kingsley is asking us to return Jung to the depths, to the waters he tread and that many of us fear. If you've only met the rational cosmos, ask it to speak. Let Catafalque unsettle you, then get to work and vow to live as if the world is alive and speaking, and as if our listening could actually help it live. The coffin is sitting in the middle. Our task is to stay with it and sing, so to speak. If we